Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and you are listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. This is Thursday, November 9th, and we are coming to you live from Lubbock, Texas in the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios and on 98.7 FM Walk by Faith Radio, 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. And we are glad to be here. It's been a cool, kind of chilly, overcast, kind of wet, misty day in Lubbock, Texas. Would have been a great day to get a cup of coffee and sit there with a good book, get a fire going, have a good old healthy bowl of soup for supper. And that's what I'm hoping we're going to get into this evening. So, it's been a great day. We've been working on spines all day long, been working on nervous systems all day long. And we've got a really interesting show for you tonight. And I really hope I'm going to try something that's completely different, and well, not totally completely different, but I'm going to get into some of my coaching background just a little bit. I'm going to share with you some of the things that I learned how to study, and I think it's going to be fun. I'm going to get on the whiteboard here. If you guys are on the radio, then it's going to be you have to try to follow me best you can. I'll try to talk my way through most of it. And so I think we'll do a pretty good job with that. But I hope you guys enjoy it. I just got to thinking about the other day. I was getting ready, and I just got to thinking about how different offensive coaches and defensive coaches in football look at things. And I spent my whole first part of my life as an offensive player and a quarterback, and then at the last 3 years of my life, I got to spend on defense at Texas Tech when I was coaching with John Goodner on his defense at Texas Tech. Spike Dykes was our boss, and it flipped. It flipped the way I saw things, and I wanted to just share that with you tonight. I think it'd be very interesting. I think it'd be a little bit of insight into something that you may not know much about. If you're an old football coach, you know all about it, but if you've never had anybody kind of explain football to you a little bit, I thought we'd just go through some of that tonight. So I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys are watching on Facebook and YouTube and X enjoy this show tonight. And we're like everything that we do, we can always tie it back to health and wellness. We can get it, and I'm gonna make an attempt. This is the first time I've ever made this attempt like this, so I'm hoping it'll be pretty fun. I think it will be fun, and it might give you a little bit of information as to how a doctor checks things out and how a doctor looks at things when they're trying to evaluate you, or at least how I look at things when we're trying to evaluate you here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. And we have lots of things that we do, and I'll get into all that in just a minute. But first thing I wanted to do tonight was I wanted to talk about the show from last night, because sometimes these books have been so impactful, and Wednesday nights is our show where we go back and do a book review, and you guys know that if you've been watching the show for a while, and you know that Wednesday night is the book review night. So what I try to do is I try to take a book that I've read somewhere along the way and just share with you what I learned from it. It might not be what the author meant for us to learn from it, but it's just what I learned from it. So we started this show September 1st, and then every Wednesday we do the book review night. So if you want to go back and learn some things about the books that we reviewed, you can just go back to start. Friday is September 1st, 2023 was our first show. And so that next week, I believe it was the 6th. So November 6th was the first night that we had. It was The End of Alzheimer's book by Dale Bredesen. And if you have someone in your family that's dealt with Alzheimer's, or if you're worried about dealing with Alzheimer's, or if you've got someone that's showing the early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, that might be a really good show to go back and watch. And the very next week we did a book review called it was a book that it was called The Body Keeps the Score. And I actually referenced that with a new patient that we had today. And that book is really, really impactful. A lot of people in the world today have gone through some sort of stress or trauma. and that book breaks down the stress or trauma. And that one was on September 13th. Was The Body Keeps the Score. So I'm not going to go through all the ones we've done, but we did one last night, and it was the 5 love languages. And it's kind of funny because sometimes after the show is over, I put my headphones down and I'm just like, it's like I'm disappointed because I have so much passion for these books, and they've literally become a fabric of my life. Like I literally function with the knowledge that I've accumulated from these books. Like this one right here. We haven't even gotten to this book yet, The Master and His Emissary, and you can see how thick it is. And like, I love this book. It's just Ian McGilchrist. What he put together in that book has just been life changing for me, and it's just helped a lot of people so far. And I'm really excited about. Like, I can't even imagine what the next 20 years of my life is going to be like just because I read this book. And I've kept it off of our Wednesday night list because I'm gonna have to. This is kind of like LSU and Alabama right here. Like you better. This is for grown men, and you better get after it if you're gonna break down this book. So I'm kind of keeping it over to the side until I can do it justice and try to do a good job with that book. But last night we had a book called The 5 Love Languages, and I wanted to just go over it really quickly about the 5 love languages, and because it's the way that you communicate with the people in your life that you love, or really just communicate with anybody. And it basically talked about the idea that we all have a love language. And I was discussing another whole concept this morning with one of my patients, and she was telling me about life languages. And so, very similar concept, different book, different idea, but very similar concept in a very in-depth way of how you can get along with someone. It might be someone at work. It might not even be a spouse or a child. It could be someone that you've got at work. And if you start to understand exactly what language those people speak, what is important to them, how do they actually feel like they're being loved? Because as unusual as it is to talk about, especially among men in Texas, it's not a common thing to talk about love, right? You're going to talk about football. You're going to talk about hunting deer. You're going to talk about golfing. You're going to talk about fishing. You're going to talk about 50,000 other things, but you're not very often going to talk about love. And so, but really, that's what this whole thing's about. It really comes down to it. We just want to be loved. We just want to be accepted. We just want somebody to recognize us, just telling us we're doing a good job, right? So that's what Jesus talked about. That's the thing that gets me about when people. I've actually been in rooms before, and people start talking about Jesus, and they start bashing Jesus, because of some Sunday school class they went to, or something they went to, some church. I don't know. Like some experience they had somewhere in their life, and they start talking about a Jesus that I've never heard of before. And they start talking about a whole Bible that I've never heard of before. And it's just kind of like, I don't know where you guys learned about Jesus, but the one, like, man, I'd love to sit down with you and visit with you someday about the one I know, because it's not anything like the guy you're explaining. Because the one I learned, he basically just talked about love. Love each other like I loved you. That's kind of what he told us to do. So that book about love languages breaks down the way that we feel like we're being loved into 5 different areas. And those 5 different areas are words of affirmation, positive words that we say to each other. Just, hey, you look cute in that shirt, or hey, good job. Thanks for doing that today. Something nice, right? Number 2 is quality time. Sometimes we just need to spend a little time with each other. Just turn our phones off, just sit down and just be us together and just spend a little time together. Receiving gifts. It doesn't have to be a $1,000 purse. Like, it doesn't have to be something that's super expensive. Just sometimes a gifts person just needs a little bit of recognition it could be something small. It could be a flower. It could be a rose. It could be just a little something you were thinking about. Shoot, we got Amazon these days, right? That ought to be an easy one. You could You could think of something, buy it for $3, have it shipped to be here tomorrow, and get something that for a gift. So number 4 was acts of service, and acts of service is just taking care of you, right? Doing all those things for you, going to get you something. If taking care of your, that's what I was talking about. Leslie, she is an acts of service girl, and she just takes care of my life. She just takes care of me, and that's the way that she loves me. And I'm a words of affirmation guy. So it was really funny today. We were talking about it with one of the patients, and she was saying, and so Leslie walked by the room, and I said, "Yeah, you." And she's like, "What are y'all talking about?" I said, "We were talking about the fact that you were thinking that I was cute today. I was looking cute today, but you didn't say it, right?" And she walked in, and she's like, I was really thinking that a while ago. And I was like, "Yep." She will think that I look cute today, but she won't tell me that. So I have to remind her to tell me that sometimes. But she will take care of me. And then that last one is physical touch. And that physical touch can be intimacy, or that physical touch can just be holding hands, or, sometimes you just touch your face or put a hand on your shoulder, some sort of just a physical touch to say, I just want you to know I love you. So whatever your love language is the love language that you tend to love your person with. And so your spouse or your child or whoever, most of the time what happens is you love them in your language, not in their language. And what the book was all about was trying to teach us that if we really want to be successful in these relationships, it would be great for us to be able to love them in their language, right? Figure out what your person's language is and then speak to them in their language. There's an awesome scene in the movie Phenomenon with John Travolta, and old Doc is sitting in the bar, and he's talking to the guys, and the guys are talking a bunch of trash about John Travolta and in his character. And old Doc loses his marbles. He gets all mad, and he's like, you know what he figured about his girl, like John Travolta. One of the things John Travolta did in the movie is he figured out what was important to the girl that he was trying to impress, and she made chairs. And so John Travolta bought the chairs, and he didn't use them. He just bought them all. He would buy a chair every week or something, and he'd take them to his house, and he had a bunch of chairs just stacked up at his house, that like wicker chairs. And it was like when Doc threw a fit, he said, "Hey, Baines," that was the guy talking trash. He's like, "You figured out your wife's chairs yet?" Obviously not. And so that scene goes to the whole point of you finding out what's important to that other person and then loving them in their language. And you just wait and see how that works out for you. So if you'd like to, you can go back and you go back and watch that show last night or listen to that show last night, and you might get something out of it that might actually help your relationship. And so it's a fabulous book. It was great. It's a great teaching, and it's been very impactful in my life to learn it. So tonight I wanted to get into something that's a little different, and I'm just gonna just kind of get after it, and it's going to be a different model than what we've done in the past. But I was just thinking about it, and I was when I was getting ready the other morning, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, that might be a really cool. It might be a really cool way to do the show. So I started in football at birth, right? My dad was a high school football coach, and I started basically at birth going to football games. And so I don't know how many days we sat at the kitchen table and just took a napkin and a pen, and my dad would just draw football plays for me. And he would like back in the old days, they had this thing called the wishbone, and the wishbone was an offense that of and I'll just show it to you. So what it looked like was that you would just have a quarterback, and they called it a fullback, and they called it two halfbacks, and that was just the wishbone right there. And so then you could draw up any defense against it, and however you wanted to draw up a defense against it, and you could just put some people over there on the defense, and then you could just draw plays up against it. And so what we would do is we'd sit there at the kitchen table, and we would just have an offense and a defense, and then it was like, all right, we're going to run the option play, and whatever, however we're going to run the option play, and we're going to read this guy right here, and this guy's going to go like that, and the quarterback's going to do this, and he's going to slip up on that guy, and he's going to slip up on that guy. We're going to block him, and then we're going to lead this guy out on him, and the quarterback's going to ride that and read that, and then it's going to be an option play out here, or he's just going to slip by that guy, and then we're going to pitch off of him. So I don't know how many hundreds of those I've done in my lifetime that we just would break it down, right? So what I was thinking the other day was, I was like, you know what? Like, people don't know that. People don't know, when you go to a football game, you don't really understand the depth of work that guys do to break down, to try to win the football game. And whenever you're talking to a football coach, there's offensive football coaches and there's defensive football coaches. And so I spent 19 years of my life on offense playing quarterback. And then I spent 3 years of coaching defense. And so here's how it kind of works. The offensive coaches always draw the plays, and they put themselves, when an offensive coach draws the play, he'll do it something like this. So I'm going to draw it in something that looks a little similar to what people do these days, except I'm going to put him under the center, but the quarterback, because there's your quarterback right there. There's your center. And that it usually puts some kind of a indication that that's the middle of the formation. And so they'll draw this play with the offense going up, like they're going forward right there. And they'll set it in some sort of formation. Here, let's do it again, because it would look more like this, because they probably put the formation to their right side most of the time. They would draw that up, and they put the formation to the right side right there. And then when they drew up a defense, it wouldn't be all that specific on how they would actually draw up their defense. So they would have they might put tackle and nose and an end, and then they'll just have a corner and a corner, and then whatever. They'll have a backer and another backer and another backer, and then they'll have a safety and a safety. And so what that is right there is, we call that a cover 2 defense. Now, I know this is crazy, so y'all just stick with me for a while, because that's what we're trying to break this down, so it gives you a little bit of an idea of depth. I do have a point to this show. So stick with me on this show and of what we're doing. So when an offensive coach has the pen, the offensive coach puts his team going up the screen, and then he just draws in a defense like the defense would line up, but he doesn't put any specific names or whatever on those guys. It's not important to him. They're just people over there. And so now he's going to draw up a play, and he's going to say, all right, here's what we're going to run. We're going to run this play here, and I don't even remember what this play is called. We ran it at New Mexico State. It was a really good play. But we're going to run this play, and we're going to say this tight end is going to come in here and bounce off of this guy, and then we're going to run a curl route, and we're going to swing this back this way. And then this guy is going to release and run an in, and he's going to release out, and then he's going to run an in. So we got a double in on that side. So this is just a football play. And the offensive guy has the pen, and the offensive guy draws that. Well, you can't stop that play, because here's what's going to happen. The quarterback, when he drops back, he's going to put his eyes on that linebacker right there. And if that linebacker right there stays towards the tight end side, then he's going to work to the back side. He's going to work over here to the twin side, to this combination route, which is unstoppable, right? So the quarterback, as he drops back, he keeps his eyes right there on that linebacker. If that linebacker works towards this tight end, if he sees him coming and works towards the tight end, then he's going to work off of this guy to determine if this guy drops deep. If that linebacker drops deep underneath that route right there, then we're going to win this one-on-one battle, and we're going to throw the ball to him. And if this linebacker works flat right there, then we're going to win this one-on-one battle, and we're going to throw the ball to him. And that's the way we're going to read that. Now, if this linebacker is to drop in, if he drops to the field, now our eyes are going to come to this linebacker. And we're going to just see what he does. And so if he gets depth and drops underneath that curl route right there, now we can just work right to this tight end, because we're going to bounce to the middle, and then we're just going to be wide open right there in the middle of the field. So we'll just throw it right there to the tight end. If he squeezes, and he squeezes that tight end, now what we'll do is we'll just come off and work the curl to the swing guy right there. You can't stop that play. It's an unstoppable play. You can just run that play every single time and you just make a touchdown. You just score a touchdown every single time, because there's no way you could possibly stop that play, right? And that's the way offensive guys think. And they do that with every single play they've got. They do the exact same play with every single time. And they'll draw up a play, and they'll put that defense out there. They'll put their same, they'll just run that same formation. And we'll just put the defense back out there somewhere. We'll even drop this safety down, and we'll drop that safety. All right, now they've dropped that safety down over here on this strong side. And now we got a bunch of people in here. Now we got, look at that. We got all these guys in here to stop the run. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blockers. And they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys in the box. And it's like, whoa, that's too many blockers for us right there. So if they got that many blockers, and we got 5 blockers, and or 6 blockers, and they've got 8 people, that's what we say the box is heavy. That's too many people to run against. So now we got one-on-one on the outside. We got one-on-one on the outside. There's no way you can stop us. We can run anything we want. We can run a streak route. We can run an out route. We can set them up and run a slant on the inside. You can't stop us. We'll beat you every time. And if you sit around with a bunch of offensive coaches and you let them talk, and you look at them and you let them have the pen, that's exactly what they will do. But let's just switch it over. And let's just run that. Now we got defensive coaches that are involved. So what are the defensive coaches going to do? They're going to flip the board around the other direction. And they're going to set it up, and it's going to look like this. And they're going to set it to a strong side left for the defense, because it's the offense's right side. And now we're going to get specific with that whole thing, right? So now we're going to say, all right, this defensive tackle is going to shade the outside of that guard right there. And this nose guard is going to shade the inside of that guard, because we're going to play gaps right there. And then I'm going to line my defensive end up on the inside shade of that tight end, so that I've got that gap covered. So now I'm gonna walk I've got a Raider who's my safety, but I usually drop him down. I'm gonna put the other end right here, and he's got this gap covered. And now I'm gonna bring my Raider, and he's gonna step out, so he's got that guy. My corner's got him. My corner's got him. My free safety's gonna be right here. And then I'm gonna have a Mike linebacker. I'm going to have a Will linebacker. And this guy's got that gap, and this guy's got that gap. So now I got all my gaps covered, so you can't run the ball. I got all my gaps covered right there. I got my guys covered up out there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run that same exact play against our defense. And I'm going to show you how we're going to shut that play down. Right? So here's what they're going to do. They're going to swing this guy. They're going to bring this guy inside. They're going to run this guy up, run the curl. He's going to release, run the in route, and he's going to run the in route, right? So if that's happening right there, here's what we're going to do on defense. Well, we're not going to put up with that. That's not the way that's going to work. So what we've got is we've got a combination over here on this side. Whoa, I'm missing a player right there. I got a Sam linebacker that's standing right there. Okay. So um, I've got combination on this strong side. And the combination, stick with me. I know you think I'm crazy, but I'm not. The combination is over here on this tight end side. And what we're going to do is if the tight end goes up or inside, the free safety is going to take him. Hang on, I got to duck my music here. Okay, so if the tight end goes up or inside, now the free safety is going to take him. So he's got that guy right there. Okay, which means the corner is going to stay over to the top of that wide receiver, and this Sam linebacker is going to work to underneath that curl. The Mike and the Will are comboing the back. If the back goes away from the Will, the Mike's got him. So the Mike now is going to come over here, and he's got that guy. And the Will is going to work himself back up underneath this combination route. And the Raider's going to stay on top of that. And the corner is going to take this guy. And we're going to stop that whole play right there. We're coming up on a break. Stay with me stick with me because it's going to get better on the other side of this break. You're going to understand what I'm saying about this and how it has to do with your health. All right, I know you think that's crazy, and I know you're like, "What is he talking about?" Dr. Clemmons must be smoking weed tonight. He's just gotten into football plays, right? Yeah. Well, there's no way you can run that play against our defense. We're just going to smash you. Like there's no like who cares? Like we got this guy. We got this guy. Like we got the whole thing under control. Like you can't beat that. There's no way you can beat that. We got everybody covered. We got all our gaps covered. You're not going to run the ball against us because we got everybody. Everybody's got a gap covered, and we got all the combinations covered. So I don't know how they're possibly going to run that play and make any yards on it. And so that's kind of the way offensive and defensive coaches work. Whoever's got the pin is the one that wins the game, and whoever's got the pin last. So if you let the offensive guy have the pin, he's going to score a touchdown on every play. He's just going to run the plays and be like, "Oh yeah, we got him on that play. We got him on this play. I'm pretty sure we can get him on that play." And if you let the defensive guy have the pin, then what you're going to get is you're going to get them stopped on every play. And I'm going to tie that in right. So I just went to break on the radio, and so I just want to let the radio people come back, and so we can tie that into what's going on the other side right there, because it's just the way that you look at it and the depth by which you look at it. That's the point that I'm trying to make on this show, and maybe you'll understand if you ever watch a football game or you think that's interesting at all. Maybe you'll watch it and say, man, there was a lot of work that went into that right there. Like every single component to the entire football game is being broken down. Like there's nothing out there that people are not working on. They've got a coaching staff that's got. We used to get film breakdown, and we would get all kinds of different tendencies about what that offense was doing and what personnel that offense was in, and we would call the personnel based on whether or not they had one tight end, so one tight end and one running back, and we call that 11 personnel. And if they had two running backs and one tight end, that was 21 personnel. So we could take what they had, and I want to just hold this point for just 1 second because I want to talk little bit about Zach Thomas and why, and part of the reason that he was an All American at Texas Tech, and now he's in the Hall of Fame, the NFL Hall of Fame. So I just want the radio people to hear that part too. So be right 1 second. Okay, hey, we're back. This is Jason Clemmons, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. and you're getting a little bit of my early life before I was a chiropractor. And we're talking about some of the stuff that's going on. We're talking about the point I'm trying to make with all this is the how technical, like what I learned from football, the life that I lived before I got into chiropractic, and the depth at which we broke things down. And I was thinking the other morning about how different people look at things. The offensive coaches look at it one way, and then when they draw a play up, they draw their offense going up the board. And a defensive coach, when he looks at it, he flips the whole thing around the other way, and then he draws the offense coming down the board, and the defense is, so we're looking at them, so we're able to. It makes sense if you're just like, if you're down here, if you're on the bottom of the board and you're looking up, then you can. This is the way we're going to play it. This is our right side. This is our right side over here. This is our left side over here. And we draw most of the plays up on our left side because of that. Why? Because that's the offense's right side. Most offenses are right-handed. So we would draw it up like that. But we would look at that. And then another thing we would do is we would take the personnel of these people, right? And then we would break down. We had a breakdown list when we would break down film. Like when I was in 1997, I came back to Tech, and the very first game, I came back in the spring of 97, and the very first game that we had, we played against Tennessee at Tennessee, and Peyton Manning, the Hall of Fame quarterback at Tennessee, that was his senior year. And so I got to break down all 11 games of Peyton Manning's junior year and the bowl game. So I got to break down I watched every play that Peyton Manning played as a junior at Tennessee, because we broke it down and got the tendencies to try to help us call the right defenses and make sure that we were in the right defenses, right? So what we would do is we would go through this exhausting list. And we had this list, and we called it the first thing we would check is P and 10. And what P and 10 meant for us was the first play that they would run after a change of possession. So if our offense punted to them and they got the ball, what's the play that they ran on the first possession? And we would look at that and see if there's any tendency. And then we would look at what's 1st and 10. And then we would look at, let's say, 2nd and short. So second down. I don't know how we break it down. Let's go 2nd and 1 to 3, and then 2nd down and 4 to 7, and then 2nd down and 7 plus. And then we get all the films for an entire football season. Like I got all the entire junior year of Peyton Manning, and I knew every play that he ran in all of those situations. And then we would take 3rd down, and we go 3rd and 1 to 3 yards, right? 3rd down and 4 to 6, 3rd down and 7 plus. So I knew every play. So we knew we would take down each one of these things, and we would break it down into the personnel, the down and distance, and we would look and we would say, all right, here's all the plays. We would take the 2nd down and 1 to 3, and we'd take all those plays, every one of those plays, and put them on one highlight film, and we would look at, okay, this is what they would do. And whenever they lined up in a certain way, they ran this play. And whenever they lined up in another way, they ran this play. And back in the old days, they used to run like tight ends and running backs and stuff like that. So if they came out and did this, and they put a tight end over here and quarterback, and they had a running back, fullback, and a tailback. Well, if they lined up like that, we could know, because we were going to line a guy up right here, and we were going to line a guy up right here. So we had a nose guard and a tackle. We had an end, and we played what's called a 6 technique, which is inside right there. We had a Sam linebacker. We had a Mike linebacker. We had a Will linebacker. We had a Raider that was stacked. We had a corner, and we had a free safety. And so what I wanted to talk for just a second, so if they came out in that formation, what we would see is we knew what plays they were going to run. We knew just by the way that they were lined up what plays that they were going to run against us right there. And so we had a guy that was here after me. He played with me. I was on the same team for 2 years with Zach Thomas. And Zach Thomas played Mike linebacker for Texas Tech. And Zach Thomas was a 2-time All-American at Texas Tech. And he was an All-American because he was a stud and he was a hard-working guy and he was a conscientious guy and he was a fantastic football player. But he also had the benefit of a defensive coordinator named John Goodner who put all this stuff together. And what Coach Goodner would do is we had tendencies on 2nd and 1 to 3. If they lined up like this, they were going to run 1 or 2 or 3 plays, and that's it. We knew their top 3 plays. And so Zach knew when it was 2nd and 1 to 3, he knew, hey, they're in this formation. Watch the ISO play. Watch this whole play that was right there. Now we're coming downhill. We're going to isolate that, and that we're going to run the ISO play. So everybody has to fit in their spot. Zach knew the play before the play was called most of the time, which allowed him to anticipate what was going to happen. So it would allow him to try to get to the position that he needed to get to. Maybe they were going to run the sweep, and he needed to get out here quickly. Maybe it's like he would know where he was supposed to go before they snapped the ball. And that was an advantage that he had that ended up making him a 2-time All-American. And then he went to the NFL and made it to the Hall of Fame with the Denver Broncos and the Dallas Cowboys. So you're asking yourself, Jason, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about football, and why are you talking about it in such detail? Right? Well, I was just thinking about how that this is the training that I had. This is the training that I had for the first 29 years of my life before I went to chiropractic school. And it was detailed. So when I go watch a football game now, I'm watching a football game with this knowledge. I'm watching a football game with all of this information right here because I'm trying to, it's just the way that I see it now. And when we have the ball, if I go to a Texas Tech football game and I watch and we have the ball, I'm looking at the defense, reading the safeties and seeing where the corners are lined up and what front they're in and how many people they have in the box, and all that stuff is going through my head while I'm just sitting there quietly watching the game. And then when it flips and our defense is on the field, I'm trying to figure out if we're lined up right and we got all our gaps covered, and do we have the wide receivers covered the way that we're supposed to, or they're going to throw the ball to this guy, or they're going to throw the ball to that guy, or they got us on this side, or whatever. It's just my brain, and my brain is just kind of built like that to analyze that, right? Well, as a doctor, I do exactly the same thing. As a doctor, it was especially being a chiropractor. I had a conversation with a patient today that's had stress her whole life, and I broke down for her what we do in the office, and I started with the brain, and you guys have seen it multiple times, right? I drew the picture, which is what I draw with every patient that comes in the office, and I drew the right side and the left side, and I drew the up and to the right, and the anxiety and the unknown that's on that right side, and then the over to the left and the known, and how you get the whole upper brain dampening the lower brain. And this is exactly the same thing I did when I was coaching. And when I got finished with all this, I said, "You have any questions?" And she said, "Yes, I have one question." And she said, "As a chiropractor, how did you get to that?" I thought it was an awesome question because she asked me, she's like, "How'd you get to that from joints?" And I was like, chiropractic's never been about joints. Chiropractic has always been about interference in the nervous system. Chiropractic has been about your body and your brain trying to talk to itself, and there's some sort of There's some sort of misalignment, and misalignment's not the right word unless you understand the football component of it, right? It doesn't mean it doesn't mean your spine is actually misaligned. That's not really the proper term. That but but if we take it and we apply it to football and we say, look, this linebacker, this tackle right here, and this end, they have to stay in that gap, and they have to stay in that gap. And if they don't stay in that gap, because this linebacker's got to be free, that nose has got to stay in that gap, and that will linebacker's got to get across that center's face, or you don't have an 8-man front. And I know that you don't understand what that means, but if you're out there coaching, you do. It's just if this doesn't happen right, if this guy gets hooked and this guy gets up on that linebacker, they're going to run the ball for a touchdown right there. And you're going to lose the game. And when you lose the game, you're going to get fired. And and then you'll end up being a chiropractor on a Thursday night talking about all this stuff. Yeah, no, just kidding. That's where it's like when she asked me, she like, how did chiropractors get to this whole thing from joints? And I was like, it never was about joints. It never was about joints. It was about nervous system function from the very beginning. And so what I've done over the last 23 years of my life is I've just kept breaking it down and kept breaking it down and kept breaking it down. Just like I broke down Peyton Manning. Just like there wasn't anything I could do about Peyton Manning. And that's disheartening because we thought we had a plan, but he ripped us to shreds anyway because he was just that good. And it didn't matter what a lot of people did to Peyton Manning. He ripped a lot of people to shreds. And so that's what's very disappointing about some of the things that happens in our office is because sometimes there's a patient that comes into our office and I can't do anything about it. I know what it's supposed to be doing, at least to the extent that I can, right? Obviously I don't know everything there is to know about everything, or I'd have already fixed it all, right? But I've broken this down, and I've broken it down, and I've broken it down, and I've broken it down, and I just keep breaking it down, just like because I want every single tendency. I want to know what happens on second down and 1-3. I want to know what happens on third down and 4-7, right? Like I need to know if they're in one tight end and one back personnel. I need to know how they're going to line up, what they're going to run when they line up, right? And as a doctor, that's exactly the same thing I'm trying to do with your health. I'm trying to study and break it down and go over it again and go over it again and go over it again because it's all coming back to this one thing called subluxation. If you're subluxated, we're going to get beat. And it's like I gotta figure that out. I gotta figure out what causes subluxation. I gotta figure out what causes subluxation exactly like I had to figure out how are you going to stay in that gap, and how are you going to stay in that gap? How do I teach this kid right here to stay in that gap between the guard and the tackle? How do I do that? What is the technique to do that? How is he going to step with which foot is he going to line up with? When he puts his hand on the ground, does it matter which hand he puts on the ground? Does it matter which foot he puts on the ground? Does it matter if he punches, how he punches with his left arm? Is he going to punch? Is he going to attack the middle? Is he going to he's supposed to be on that shade, but is he going to get way out in the middle of the gap? Or is he going to stay tight on that guy's shoulder? Like it was down to every detail to try it. Why? Because if this offensive guard did this, we lost. It's like, you know what that means? Like all the families have to go find a new place to live. When you lose the football game, you get fired. If you lose too many of them, you get fired. And all the families have to go find a new place to live. All the trainers got to get a new job. All the strength and conditioning guys got to get a new job. You know how many people are involved in a college football program? A bunch of them. You know how many people have to when you know these coaching staffs that we've been through at Texas Tech for several years in a row. You know how many people are involved in that? When they don't do that one simple thing, everybody's got to go find a new place to live. There's no more work for you here. You got to go move. I saw Coach Wells on the football field the other night against Oklahoma State. He was our football coach right here at Texas Tech, right? He got fired. Now he's living in Norman. So are his kids. It's like, I guess, I don't know, but it's uproot everything and move to the next town and try in the next town to get this guy to stay in that gap. Because if you don't, you're going to get fired again, and then you're going to have to move to the next town, right? So you're like, Jason, you're a little crazy. That's all right. I don't mind being crazy because this right here is more important to me than who wins that silly football game. People say, you ever miss coaching? I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? Look at this. Look at this. Let me show you what a subluxation is. Do I know coaching? Yes, I know coaching. I know about little X's and O's, and I know how to line it up, and I could read that free safety, and I could tell you when that blitz is coming and all that stuff, right? But it's not a hill of beans in my life compared to this subluxation right here. When this pattern is not working, it destroys your life. And when it destroys your life, it uproots everybody else's life too. It destroys everybody's life that you had a chance to change. It destroys the future of the planet as far as I'm concerned. You think of this whole crap, you look, all this crap that's going on in the world today would be going on if people were getting adjusted to taking their fish oil? And that's like, I know that sounds crazy to say. I know you're thinking that I've lost my mind tonight, but I haven't. I'm like, you think all that crap is going? Do you guys get sick of watching all this politics stuff and these Republicans and Democrats acting like a bunch of little kids that we can't act mature and function together? And while these people blowing each other up all over the planet, and I just wondered to myself, like all this shooting that's going on and all this craziness going on, I just wondered to myself, does anybody understand that this whole planet's subluxated? Like, do you understand how important it is that these bones line up properly? What if you're going to use that term? Like because if they don't line up properly, it disrupts the way that fires into the brain. And if it disrupts the way that fires into the brain, you might actually get dis-ease. Dis-ease. Right? You might actually get sick because your tackle's not lined up on that guard properly and can't stay in his gap. And that's the point of the show. The point of the show is that there's a proper way that your body is supposed to function. Just exactly like there's a proper way that a defense is supposed to line up. And there's a proper way that a defensive tackle and a defensive end and a linebacker are supposed to play that play. And if they play that play the way that they're supposed to play that play, then we have a chance to be successful. You know what's disgusting to me is every time we talk about recruiting better players, everybody talks about it. Everybody, and every time you get a new coach, everybody wants to talk about recruiting better players. We got plenty good players. It ain't our problem in Lubbock is not the fact that we don't have good players. You got to coach them up, and you got to coach up every scenario so that you can't miss those scenarios, because if you do, you're liable to get beat. Well, if you're a chiropractor, you got to coach up the whole thing. It's not just about the fact that you leaned over and picked up some case of water and hurt your back. Right? It's not about your back pain, even though your back pain is part of the picture. It's about your brain. It's about your whole system. It's like, which part of the body do you not take care of? There's some things I don't do better than others, but look, we got ankles, we got knees, we got hips, we got wrists, we got elbows, we got shoulders, we got spinal issues, we got muscle issues, we've got brain function, we've got anxiety and depression, we've got ADD and ADHD, we got the whole gamut of the whole thing, right? And what happens? How does your body work, right? If this doesn't work, if this whole thing is not firing properly and your body's not firing properly, then what happens? You get a feedback. Coach Gooder could sit in the press box and they could run a play against our defense, and he could tell you exactly who broke down. He could tell you exactly who was out of their position because he already knew how they blocked the scheme. He already knew where we should have stopped them. And it's like, if they ran the ball, we could tell you immediately so-and-so was out of his gap. Dadgummit, tell so-and-so to get in his gap, right? He would know it because he knew what it was supposed to be like, and then he knew how to backtrack off of that. So when we're evaluating, that's what happened to that patient today when she asked me. She's like, how did it become about brain? Well, it became about brain because I kept studying subluxation for 19 years, 23 years actually. Why do you say that right there? Why do you keep saying that? We were looking in our staff meeting this morning. We were looking in the staff meeting about degenerative disc disease. And I know I've talked about this lots of times before, right? Why does that disc get all worn out? Why does the disc wear itself out and the bone spur grow, and all that sort of thing? You know why? There's two components to disc disease. You've probably been told you've got degenerative disc disease or arthritis in your spine. Remember? Well, what did we talk about on Tuesday night when we were looking at extreme health, and we were talking about food allergies and food allergies causing inflammation, right? So degenerative disc disease is a combination of abnormal movement and abnormal chemistry. Let's work through that for a second. It's abnormal movement and abnormal chemistry. Well, if it's abnormal chemistry, what does that mean? That means I have inflammation. I'm inflamed. I've got inflammation. If I'm inflamed, why am I inflamed? Well, maybe because my omega-6s are too high and my omega-3s are too low. So what would you do about that? Take your fish oil. Jason, what? God, thanks, son. You're going to just type it back. You're going to string it on back to fish oil again? Yeah, I'm gonna string it right back to that. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna string it right back to that tackle staying in that gap because I know how important that is. I know how important. I know for 29 years of my life, I studied that right there, and I can tell you how important that is for that tackle to stay in that gap. I've got some adapting I can do. I can get that Mike linebacker. If this guy gets hooked, then we got to switch gaps, or the will linebacker coming over the top, we got to switch gaps. I can teach him to bump. That's my one chance to adapt because he thinks he's got that gap right there. And then we got two guys in the same gap and nobody in this gap, and that Mike's out. It's out the gate. It's out the gate right there. I know how important that is to win the football game. And I know how important this is to win life. I know that took me a bit to get there, and I sure hope that made some sort of sense to you, because it's the same thing to me. We're in this game of life and we're trying to win the game of life. And it's why in the heck, one of my patients, he said, I said something about, yeah, we got our show tonight. And she was like, oh, I saw that it's on. It's like, what night is it? And I was like, it's Monday through Friday. It's Monday through Friday from 6 to 7. And she's like, man, that's a lot of commitment. And I'm like, well, I made some joke like, I could go home. There's no one will talk to me anyway. I just look at my phone. But the truth is, it's taken me a long dadgum time to get this show going, and I'm not very good at it, and I still can't get my sound and my audio to match together. But I've been at it for a long. I've been wanting to do this because of one reason. I understand how dang important this is to win the game of life, and I understand that if we get it wrong, we're going to lose. And I don't want us to lose. I want us to win, and that's why we'll keep working at it, and I keep trying to share it with you, and I'll stay after it. We won't quit. We'll keep trying to share it, and then plus, in the meantime, you might get a little bit more knowledge of how football works. So the next time you go to a football game, you'll be able to say, "Dadgum, that guy was out of his gap right there. That's why they were able to run the ball." So I know it's crazy, but I really appreciate you guys. I hope you got something out of that, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. I hope everybody enjoyed that show. If you got any questions, send me a message. I'd love to talk to you. Otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow night.